Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Triumph from Phalanx Games. Triumph is a 2 to 5 player area control game with semi-cooperative elements that, well, let's go ahead and get into it. And also please don't be scared off by that semi-cooperative aspect. That's something I don't like in games, and I really don't feel that in this one. But let's get into all of this over here. Although, of course, before we do, everything you see here is a prototype. All rules and components subject to change, and of course, I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. But past that, like I said already, Triumph is a 2 to 5 player area control game. In the game, you're basically fighting off against the various barbarian hordes as they slowly approach towards Italy over here, towards Rome, to try to close in on you. You are playing across 3 rounds of play over here, and across each of those rounds, you're going to be going through a full sequence where you move this marker down one at a time as players bid for the strength of various factors over here in different areas as far as the different things they can do, knowing full well you can't come out on top on everything, so you have to pick and choose where to play your auction cards, your little family cards over here, to try to get the benefits you want the most. You are not fighting each other in the game, you're fighting the barbarian hordes, but the flip side is you are dealing with some degree of area control as you vie for points from the various regions at the end of each round. Now we're going to be going through as much as possible over here, but there's a lot of minutiae that I will not be getting into. I highly recommend checking out Meeple University if you want a full rules overview, but as far as this game goes over here, let's walk you through it. So, 3 rounds of play in the game. Now, in the game, what you're going to be doing is across each of those rounds, you will be moving this tracker down and then bidding on the various benefits over here. Whoever bids the highest card, because you have a hand of 0 to 5 over here, 6 cards over here, and that 1, because there's only 5 sections you're bidding, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So while you're only bidding on 5 sections, you will use all cards, because your 1 allows you to play a card after the fact. After you see everyone else's revealed cards, you can play a 1. So you are going to be playing all 6 of your cards over here to get various benefits from those regions and try to lock in bonuses. In each region, you're getting something, but the higher regions get you more of a benefit, and then depending on the player count, if you're playing at 3 to 5 players, if you're playing at a 3 to 5 player count, then the lower players, or the lowest player, will not get something. Instead, they'll get a consolation prize instead of one of the benefits. So let's go into that a bit more so you understand what that means, using this example over here, and there are very handy little player aids over here that go through absolutely everything for you. Very, very well done player aids. But in this distributed over here, you're going to be trying to get your hands on cards from this marketplace. You're going to be able to get a card. You'll have the opportunity to pay for an extra card as well, and then placing a cube for the area control elements, where you place a little client over here, a little citizen somewhere in the region, either in a spot on the board to try to lock in area control benefits, either cementing your control somewhere, going to new places, or alternatively going to these various buildings where you can get 2 points every round, or you can get the benefit of the building. In buildings, every building that comes out, and you're going to have buildings entering play each round, but in those buildings, you're going to be getting either points as an ongoing basis, or you're going to be getting the benefit of the building. There's a bunch of different buildings that give you some perk. In this case, you get to reroll, I believe. I believe this one is the reroll. I have to double check, but I think this is the reroll in battle when you're going through that. Or it might be a different one that's reroll. I might be forgetting. I think this one is the reroll. I have to check that player aid. But in any case, so you're trying to go ahead and get in that area of control. Now, the person who bids the highest number, so let's say I go ahead and I bid my 1 over here, and let's say they bid their, their 4 over here, and because, and let's say they bid their, I don't know, let's say they bid a 4 as well, okay? There's going to be an element for that as far. In fact, that's actually a good reason where you can show you some other elements here. So now that I see that, I'll go ahead and add my 4 on top of it, so that I'm actually the highest. We'll add that to my 1, my total is 5 over here, and now I'm the highest, I have that information, and now all the 4s are gone out of the mix over here, which is good, because it means I can still win with my 5, and they'll still be afraid of me, for now. In any case, this will resolve over here with green going first, and then between blue and purple, you're going to look at this tiebreaker chart over here. Green's going to move to the front because they're going first, and blue and purple's going to break the ties right now. In general, when you win, you move to the front. Sorry, blue's going to break the tie. Blue's going to break the tie over here. When you win, you move to the front, but ties are broken to the past, which means over time the ties will favor all players equally over time. So let's go ahead and resolve that over here. That means that blue, despite playing a 4, unfortunately will not get any benefit. Instead, they'll get a consolation prize of one of these tokens, and you can use a hand of both of these tokens to be able to get a bunch of benefits in the game, but we're going to ignore that for right now. And instead, starting with green, you're going to have the opportunity to go ahead and take one of these cards, possibly buying another, which gives you first agency of those cards, but also placing one of your cubes down somewhere. Maybe we want that area control, maybe we want that ability every round, and purple, maybe they go ahead and take those 2 points, or maybe they just locked in over here, because honestly, these have a maintenance cost, and right now, with Umbria being a little freed up, that might be a better spot to go to. So we're going to go and try to lock in those points at the end of the round. In any case, from there, you're going to go ahead to move to the next region. You've resolved one region, you're going to go down here. In the censor, you have the opportunity to put down more cubes, get money, and also place new buildings in play. There's going to be a marketplace of buildings that can be placed into control, so now you can go ahead and add new buildings, new abilities. Again, these will have an upkeep cost each round. Then you're going to move down over here. And the console is where you're going to go into battle. You're going to get money, but also be able to move around and go into battle. This is where, and again, we'll get into some aspects of this, but effectively, you're going to be trying to fight the various enemies, and you're doing so with a combination of different things. You're going to be rolling dice for both sides. It's going to add to your strength on both sides. You're going to be looking at the little shield over here. So there's 1, 2, and 3 shields in that area. That's going to be true for all areas 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and, well, 1, 2, and 2. 2 over here. And we have 1, 2, and 3 over here. So you have different number of shields that will add to the enemy strength. You're going to have your own legions that add to your strength, and you can have legions that will be moving to areas. You'll pay for them to recruit to move them to an area. And you also have legions over here, which I did not put out, that you can also recruit from this track. And as Rome slowly expands outwards on the board, as they take control of different areas, you're going to uncover more legionary symbols where you can start recruiting more and more every single round as this track continues to escalate. So you're going to be weighing up the dice, you're going to be weighing up your strength over there, you're going to be weighing up against the enemy things, you're going to be weighing up against the faction over here. So you're going to see over here, if there is a general, not all regions have one, but for example over here we have a general over here, that's going to add 4 strength to the enemies, but also adds a perk. You're going to get 4 victory points and 3 money for defeating this general, and there is the concept as well, which we're not heavily getting into everything, there's the concept of being a supporting general as well, where you get less points, possibly gifted money in exchange for the other person getting points as well. A few other aspects as far as being a supporting general. That's where you're going to take your marker and put it on one side or the other, depending on whether you're the main or supporting general. Any generals that were not defeated, any enemies that were not defeated, will try to advance towards Rome. So there's both an offensive play here, but there's also a bit of a defensive play you want to be mindful of. If you don't think you have the strength to take down an enemy on their terrain, because you are adding those extra points from the region, sometimes it's better to be a little reactive and defensive and take them down instead. You'll still get the benefits to take them down, and you might not need as much military strength to do so. That's going to be the fighting area over here. Then you move to over here, where you're going to go ahead and remove a cube from somebody. So you can go ahead and take off a cube from somebody else in this region over here. And then lastly, you have more area control. More ways to place cubes down, this time in new areas that were conquered, which is helpful because you're going to get, in addition to getting points at the end of the round, and at the end of every round, whoever has the most cubes in an area will get points based on the numbers shown on the board, but you also have an element of tax generation, where you can get money for areas where you control as well, but not for Rome itself, so not the center area of Italy, but rather areas you go through over there. And then we go over here, where you pay money for any upkeep of buildings, which is 1, 2, or 3, depending on the round that you're in. That's the basic idea of the game. You're going to repeat that cycle across each round. There's some more setup, more generals will be added. You're expanding the influence of Rome. You're trying to gather cards. Those cards will give you effects you can have in battle. They also, I didn't even talk about it, but depending on these cards over here, some of the cards you play are going to add legionaries, which will add to your strength, because you're adding that. These are effectively the thing that compensates for the strength of the enemy over there. Both sides will have a die as well. So you're going to have these aspects where you're trying to be mindful of the cards you're playing, the bids you're making. You're trying to be mindful of, there's a few things. We didn't even talk about this track over here. We're going to have a way to move up in this track over here, but it's also, again, going to have an upkeep cost, but it can give you area control points as well as you go through that. So there's a bunch of things we didn't heavily get into, but that's the general idea of Triumph. 3 rounds of play, expanding Rome's reach, trying to be mindful of your point generation, your cost, your income, trying to keep everything afloat as you desperately try to do a little too much of everything, and try to do as much as you possibly can. Which I guess brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. The rulebook is fairly straightforward. It's structured in a way that I don't personally like, which it teaches you concepts and then the flow. So I have to hold all this information in my head before understanding the round flow. But I don't think it's actually a hard game to learn. It's just the rulebook teaches it in, there's different ways to teach games, and the rulebook I think was not the way I like to learn games. But I think it's actually a pretty simple, straightforward game. I think I could teach you and get you up and running in like 7 minutes, especially if I'm there to hold your hand. I don't think it's that long of a teach. It's pretty straightforward. As far as game time, it's only 3 rounds. Depends on player count to a degree, but you can knock out a game in generally under an hour of this one. It's a fairly fast-moving game. Has you playing some cards, going for these regions, resolving this track, 3 times, and then seeing how far you've expanded Rome's reach. Or, I mentioned earlier, there's a semi-cooperative aspect. If the enemy generals ever enter Rome, all players lose. If they ever make their way all the way here. Now, I don't like semi-cooperative games in general. Even when I do like them, I kind of almost like them hesitantly. I genuinely do not feel that Triumph has any elements of the things that I don't like about semi-co-op. It's possible that I can see an enemy general entering Rome, but I haven't really seen that here. Usually the thing I don't like about the classification of semi-co-op is when other players have to do things that are inefficient to stop the entire game from being lost, and that forces a structure where a selfish player can basically walk around ignoring the maintenance of not losing, and the other players don't have to be mindful of that or they lose. I don't like that in semi-cooperative games, but that's just, I haven't felt that when playing Triumph at all. Yes, there is a win condition where the board can win, but I haven't really seen it. Again, maybe I just need to play it more. I haven't seen it impact the game so much as be an incidental rule. So if you are someone who doesn't like semi-co-op, yes, this game has a dash of it, but not in a way that bothers me, and I don't like semi-co-op. Past that, as far as let's go ahead and dive into the review part of things, starting off with what I like over here, which is the bidding for actions is a mechanic that I generally like in other games as well. In the game, you get to do certain things, but the strength of what you get to do them, the way you get to them, is going to depend on this action track over here, and every round you have a limited hand of cards, you're trying to figure out what do you want, what's going to give you the best incentive, because you want the best placement for area control, you want the best access to the cards in the marketplace, you want the higher strength combat, all these different things, the most money as far as navigating, as far as the best positioning, you want all these different things in the game, but you have to decide where you think your time, effort, energy is best spent because you only have these cards and you're going to have to use them somewhere. So how, where, when? I like that general mechanic because it forces a very simple structure where you're not even dealing with an external currency, you're just dealing with a hand of cards, well not this card, you're dealing with a hand of cards over here and then trying to think through where they go the most. I like the general sense of peaceful fighting this game has because this game has elements of area control where you are looking at who has the most clients in different regions on the board, and so it does have a degree of conflict with other players, but for the most part, you are marching into combat together with the other players, and you're just trying to tactically navigate where you think you want to be the supporting general, where you think you have the strength to do so, where it's totally fine being second place in the game because, sure, it feels like you're second place, but really you're spending your other energies elsewhere, and you're literally just capitalizing on the success of others in the game. I like that kind of peaceful fighting dynamic at play, because it's not a cooperative game. You are vying for the most points. It's 100% not cooperative, but it has a sense of working together, while the understanding that ultimately it comes down to who is winning in the game. The escalation across 3 rounds is present as far as, you're going to get more things going on, you're going to have more points coming in, more tax purposes coming in as far as the various growth of your empire and how you get things, so it does have that escalation. And the buildings give you some abilities and mitigation around different things, different ways to either get extra things or re-roll dice or move things around, so you do have that additional element of abilities that are going to come both from the cards and from the buildings in the game. As far as things I don't like in the game, there are a few things to get into, but first of all, this is a low point scoring game for sure. Meaning in general, the fact that you can get 2 points from a region, that's a nice chunk of points. Vying across the whole game to get those 8 points over there, that's a reasonable thing to consider because this is not a game where points are being given out like candy. This is a game you have to fight for every single point, and that just means like, it feels, to me it's like, I've talked about this in other videos, other reviews, but like, I like feeling like I really got a lot for what I did, and in this game, in Triumph, I don't. The math all checks out, I'm sure. I haven't done it, but I'm sure the math checks out, but it feels like you really work hard to get even a few points, and that's not as much of a feel-good thing in the game in general. I'll say that the cards don't always feel cool enough in the game. I mean, the cards effectively are these pool of cards that you're trying to utilize and trying to gain, and as much as I kind of want to always be focusing on Tribunus over here as something that I have to get, that card over there, because that card is really going to be the one that helps them the most, and I don't feel that way in the game. I feel the cards are okay. They all do something, they're all helpful, they are helpful, I want them, but like, I don't usually pay for the cards in this game. There's an extra option to pay 2 coins for an extra card, and I've rarely done so. I usually feel the coins are better spent on other things, and again, this is not to say the balance of the game, I can't speak for that, I just know the cards don't strike me with like, I really want that card, and when it comes to powers and abilities, I like wanting the power and ability as opposed to feeling like, oh, I guess I can use this here for a useful purpose. So I wish the cards were a bit more exciting in the game. Can't speak to how it affects balance, I just wish it were there. But really, those are kind of nitpicks. My biggest thing about the game is, to me, 3 rounds feels too short. I feel in Tribunus that, in Triumph over here, I feel in Tribunus is that area, Triumph is the game, I feel in Triumph that I don't get as much done as I'd like across 3 rounds of play. I feel like I really... the game's over as soon as you start, and many of the areas that you're building up towards as far as your area control, as far as your taxation, your points, it feels like the game ends almost as soon as it begins. So while I like many things that are happening in this game, the net result is an experience that is slightly unsatisfying for me because I like the idea of what the game is doing, but I don't feel that sense of investment in what's happening because of how quickly it's over. The game has area control and it has things that you get rewarded for over time, but that over time is 2 rounds. I mean, your first round happens. By the time your first round's over, which is immediately, suddenly you're already getting a third less for anything you've done. In general, I have this problem with games where I almost want to get always a little more done, but many games I find, even though it's only 6 rounds, only 4 rounds, usually by the time the game is done, I feel that sense of, you know what, I kind of hear it, it works, they scaled it, they knew what they were doing, In Triumph, I'm sure they do know what they're doing, but I still wanted more out of the experience. As far as things I can see others not liking, first of all, that semi-co-op aspect, maybe. Again, I really don't think it will affect you, but I don't want to tell you it's not there and then have it be a problem for you in your games. For me, it wasn't a problem in my games. That's all I can really say. And then secondly, I'll say that you could get into a degree of infighting. Specifically in a 3-player game, there is the possibility where 2 players end up trying to fight over the same area control elements, and that results in the 3rd player not having to worry about it. If you're fighting each other over certain areas on the board to try to get those points, instead of just going for your own thing, you could have 2 players who end up kind of hurting each other while the 3rd player doesn't have to worry about that and gets ahead. I find that is something that can happen in 3-player games, and it's something that could be present in Triumph. I've seen elements of it, not enough to ruin my games, but I've certainly seen enough elements that's something I would caution you about. As far as final thoughts on Triumph, I'm a little torn on the overall structure here because I do like what the game is doing. I have had fun playing the game, but for me, there's a difference between the process of playing a game and then the end satisfaction, and that affects my ratings. My ratings have a specific meaning. If you look down below in the description, every rating has an exact meaning of what it means, and for me, I think this is a 3 out of 5. Not I think it is. It is a 3 out of 5. I think there are elements of the game that I enjoy more than that, but the net conclusion, the 3 rounds for me really took away from how much I enjoyed the game in terms of my desire to play it again, because while the mechanics work well, I walked away from Triumph wanting to do more. Every time I play this, I walk away feeling like, well, maybe next time I'll be able to get more done, but it hasn't. I like the game. I feel like the 3 is almost a disservice to the game, but the net package of where it is, because of what I get out of the experience at the end of 3 rounds, it is a 3 out of 5. But if you do like this game, it's one of those things where I do think it might be a game that works better for you. It kind of depends on how satisfied you are or are not with how much you get done in the game. Because the actual game itself works well. I just, like, if it's a 4-round game, I'd already, like, I mean, you'd have to balance around different things, of course, but yeah, for me, it's a 3 out of 5 with almost a hesitancy that I kind of wish I could give it a higher rating, but the net rating is what it is. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for another game that's going to be set in a similar theme, but very different mechanics, I'd say Tribune Inter Paramus is a phenomenal game that is, very well done, but it's more area control. There's more worker placement than area control. A whole different genre, but, whole different game, but same genre or theme. And if you're looking for another game that I really enjoy, that has an element of that kind of bidding for mechanisms, that you bid for your actions for the ability to take actions, Cyclades is one of my favorite games in that genre, and the fact that every single round, what you can do is very dependent on what you spend money to be able to do, and it totally changes the way you approach an area control puzzle. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.